Whether you have a teenager or a toddler or a child in elementary school, if you're going through a rough time with them right now, just they're growing up, but just where they are in their own development, their own stage of growing up, because God knows each stage is very different, has its own challenges. If it's a hard time, even in your relationship with them, when your child grows up and looks back on this time, how do you want them to see these rough times? What do you want them to remember about these hard times? How do you want them to feel about themselves when they look back on these years? And then how do you want them to see how you handled these rough times, right? And we've all been there. I've been there. We have 4 children, and each one has had their own challenges in their own ways, and it's up to us how we show up for them. And it is hard. I'm not trying to make it like, oh, and it's just so easy, you just breeze right through it. That's absolutely not how it happens, and anyone raising kids knows it, right? But the thing is, it is up to us to be the adults, to be mature, to be loving, to really take time away from our kids, not in the heat of the moment, and decide, how do we want to be? What values do we want to be teaching our kids? What do we want our kids to learn about this? What do we want them to learn about themselves? What do we want them to learn about adversity? What do we want them to learn about how we show up for them when we're all struggling, right? So really take your time and think about that, because we can really have a lot of regrets if we're not careful and we don't take time to consciously, intentionally think about it. We can be lashing out at our kids. We can be blaming kids for things that we've done, and not recognizing that our own shortcomings might have caused our kids to be the way they are. I definitely had that experience with our oldest son, that when he finally had enough of the way I treated him when he was little and he lashed back out, I blamed him like he was a bad kid. He was simply responding to the horrible parenting that I was doing at the time. And I love myself, and I know I was struggling at the time, and I can be really honest, I had some really horrible parenting when it came to him, a lot of times when he was young, even up through his teenage years. And so I was getting back what I was giving to him, but I wasn't owning my own shit. I was blaming him, and that was not fair, and he didn't deserve that. And it kept us from getting to a point of resolution. It kept us from connecting. And so now, as he's an adult and I look back, I'm like, oh God, if I could have done this differently. So here's the thing. Now you get to kind of rewind time. If your kids are still little, you get to flash forward to when they're an adult and go, okay, if I could look back on this time, what do I want to remember? What do I want my kids to remember? What do I want them to learn? How do I want them to feel about themselves, about me, about the situation? And you get to kind of rewind time now, drop into this present moment and decide.